everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the global housing market, 2025. And you want to know what's happening out there, right? You want to know where the trends are pointing and how you can use that information to make smart decisions about buying and selling or investing. And lucky for us, there's this great article called How the Global Housing Market is Shifting in 2025. What you need to know. It really breaks it all down.
Yeah.
So are you ready to unpack all this?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's start with the elephant in the room. Or maybe we should say the lingering effects of the pandemic. I feel like it's really changed how we think about our homes. How about you?
100%. The pandemic really forced us to look at our living spaces in a whole new light.
Yeah.
Working remotely and needing those home offices and just that desire for more outdoor space. I mean, those trends have become ingrained in our housing preferences now. This article highlights that something like 60% of potential home buyers now prioritize home office spaces and outdoor areas. When looking for a new home, it makes you wonder if this shift is going to be permanent.
Yeah, it really does. And speaking of shifts, the rise in interest rates is a big one. It's making mortgages more expensive. How is this impacting the market?
Well, it's definitely a factor that's cooling things down a bit. Central banks are raising interest rates to try and control inflation, and that, of course, affects mortgage rates. The article says that mortgage rates have gone up an average of 1.5% from last year. But, it's not all doom and gloom. While it's true that higher rates make it more expensive to borrow money for a home, it also means that there's less competition from other buyers.
So maybe it's actually a good time for buyers who are really serious and prepared to buy. Maybe they can get a better deal. What about the whole seller's market thing, though? Is that still a thing in 2024?
That's a great question. And the answer is it depends. In some regions, especially those that saw massive price surges during the pandemic, we're starting to see a shift in power dynamics. The article mentions that prices in some metropolitan areas have begun to plateau or even decline slightly. As inventory increases and buyer demand cools down, this means buyers might have a bit more leverage now when negotiating. What's really interesting here is that this shift might create opportunities in secondary cities or emerging suburbs where prices are still relatively affordable and there's potential for growth.
That's a really interesting point. It's like the market is kind of recalibrating itself. But we can't talk about the housing market without addressing the elephant in the digital room. Technology, virtual tours, blockchain, AI. It seems like tech is changing everything. What are some of the biggest ways that technology is impacting real estate right now?
Oh, technology is revolutionizing the real estate landscape in so many ways. One key area is how properties are being showcased and transacted. Virtual tours have become incredibly sophisticated, allowing potential buyers to really experience a property from anywhere in the world. And then you've got blockchain technology that's streamlining transactions, making them faster, more secure, and more transparent. There's a fascinating case study in the article about a blockchain platform that reduced closing times from a whole month down to just 10 days.
10 days. Wow. That's incredible. It makes you wonder what other technological advancements are just around the corner. But before we get too caught up in the digital world, let's talk about a very real-world trend, the rental market boom. I keep hearing that it's just exploding right now. What's driving this surge in demand for rentals?
Well, there are a few factors at play here. First, as home ownership becomes more challenging for some, due to, affordability concerns, more people are opting to rent. And second, there's a growing segment of the population that prefers the flexibility and the lower commitment that comes with renting over owning. The article mentions that rental rates in major cities have increased by an average of 12% over the past year.
Wow, that's a lot. This raises an interesting question for our listeners who might be considering real estate investments. What are some smart strategies for navigating this booming rental market? Should they stick to major cities, or are there other options worth exploring?
Well, major cities definitely offer a large pool of potential renters. But savvy investors are starting to look beyond the usual hotspots, college towns, for instance. With their steady influx of students, they're becoming increasingly attractive. They offer consistent demand and the potential for strong rental yields.
That's a really insightful tip. Thinking outside the box, find those niche markets. It's all about being strategic, isn't it?
Exactly. It's about understanding the trends and adapting your strategy accordingly.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've talked about the lasting effects of the pandemic, the impact of rising interest rates, the shift in power dynamics between buyers and sellers, and the rise of technology and the rental market boom. It's a lot to take in, but it's crucial information for anyone looking to make informed decisions in the real estate market.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, especially in a dynamic market like this.
I couldn't agree more. Now, before we move on, I want to hear from you. What's standing out to you so far? What are your thoughts on these trends and how they might impact your own real estate decisions? We'll be back in a moment to explore even more insights from the article, including a closer look at how technology is shaping the future of real estate and what that means for both buyers and sellers. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. It's fascinating to see how these different factors are influencing the housing market in 2025.
It really is. And before we get into the, nitty-gritty of how technology is shaking things up, I'm curious about something. We talked about rising interest rates making mortgages more expensive, but what about alternatives like adjustable rate mortgages? I feel like those are making a comeback.
You're right to bring those up. Adjustable rate mortgages, or ARMs, they can be a good option for some buyers, especially in a rising interest rate environment. They typically offer a lower initial interest rate for a fixed period, which can make monthly payments more affordable in the short term. But it's important to remember that the rate can adjust after that initial period. So it's crucial to understand the terms and potential risks before diving in.
That's a great point. It's all about weighing the pros and cons and finding what works best for your individual situation. But let's shift gears back to technology. You mentioned virtual tours earlier. Those are pretty cool. Have you ever tried one?
I have. And I have to admit that technology has come a long way. Some virtual tours are so immersive, it's almost like being physically present in the property. But beyond the coolness factor, they're incredibly practical. They allow potential buyers to view properties from anywhere in the world, saving time and money.
And I bet they're a game changer for sellers, too. Expanding their reach to a much wider audience, it's like breaking down geographical barriers. But what about blockchain? I know it's a buzzword, but how is it actually being used in real estate?
Blockchain is more than just hype. It's actually revolutionizing how real estate transactions are conducted. One of the most impactful applications is in property ownership records. Traditionally, these records are stored in physical files or centralized databases, which can be prone to errors, delays, and even fraud. But with blockchain, property ownership is recorded on a secure, decentralized ledger that's accessible to all parties involved.
So it's like a digital tamper-proof record of who owns what.
Exactly. This increases transparency, reduces the risk of fraud, and can significantly speed up the closing process. Remember that case study we mentioned earlier about closing times being reduced to 10 days? That was achieved using a blockchain platform.
Right. That's incredibly impressive. It seems like blockchain is bringing a whole new level of efficiency and security to the real estate industry. But with all this talk about cutting-edge technology, let's not forget about the human element. After all, buying or selling a home is a big decision, often driven by personal needs and emotions. How do you see technology and human interaction coexisting in the future of real estate?
That's a crucial point. While technology can streamline processes and provide valuable insights, it's important to remember that real estate transactions are ultimately about people. The role of real estate agents, for example, is evolving rather than disappearing. They're becoming more like trusted advisors, guiding clients through the complexities of the market. And providing personalized support, it's about finding the right balance between leveraging technology and preserving that human connection.
I love that. It's about using technology to enhance the human experience, not replace it. But speaking of the human experience, let's circle back to the rental market. We mentioned that it's booming, but what are some of the challenges and opportunities for both renters and landlords in this evolving landscape?
That's a great question. For renters, one of the biggest challenges is affordability. As demand continues to outpace supply in many areas, rental prices are rising, making it difficult for some to find decent, affordable housing.
And I imagine landlords are facing their own set of challenges too.
Absolutely. Landlords have to navigate a complex web of regulations, maintain their properties, and find reliable tenants. But there are also opportunities. The demand for rentals is high, which means landlords can often command favorable rents. And technology is making it easier than ever to manage properties, screen tenants, and collect rent online.
So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Challenges and opportunities coexist in this dynamic market. But before we move on, I'm curious about your thoughts on something. We've talked a lot about the current state of the housing market. But what does the future hold? What are some of the trends you're seeing that might shape the market in the years to come?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Predicting the future of the housing market is always a challenge. But there are a few key trends that are worth watching closely.
Let's hear them. Our listeners are eager to know what's on the horizon.
One trend that's already gaining momentum is the rise of sustainable and energy-efficient homes. As awareness of climate change grows and energy costs rise, people are increasingly looking for homes that are both environmentally friendly and cost-effective to operate.
That makes perfect sense. It's about aligning our housing choices with our values and our wallets. Are there any other trends you're seeing?
Another fascinating trend is the growing interest in co-living spaces, particularly among younger generations. These are shared living arrangements that offer a sense of community, affordability, and convenience. It's a new way of thinking about housing that's challenging traditional models.
It's like a modern take on communal living. I can see how that would appeal to people who value connection and shared experiences. But co-living spaces, sustainable homes. It seems like the future of housing is all about innovation and adaptation. What advice would you give to our listeners who are trying to navigate this ever-changing landscape?
My advice would be to stay informed, be open to new ideas, and don't be afraid to think outside the box. The housing market is constantly evolving, and those who are willing to adapt and embrace change will be best positioned to thrive. And remember, whether you're buying, selling, renting, or investing, knowledge is your most valuable asset.
That's such great advice. Knowledge is power, and it's the foundation for making smart decisions. But we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive. We've explored the nuances of adjustable rate mortgages, delved into the fascinating world of blockchain and virtual tours, and discussed the evolving roles of technology and human interaction in real estate. We've also touched on the challenges and opportunities in the rental market and peeked into the future of housing. It's been an insightful journey so far, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We've unpacked a lot of valuable information from this article. And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll be exploring a topic that's close to many people's hearts, the emotional side of real estate. We'll discuss how to make informed decisions that align with your personal values, financial goals, and lifestyle aspirations. Stay tuned for more insightful discussions.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the global housing market of 2025. So far, we've covered a lot of ground. From the impact of the pandemic and rising interest rates to the rise of technology and that booming rental market. But now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about something a little less tangible, but equally important, the emotional side of real estate.
Yeah, that's a crucial aspect that often gets overlooked. Buying or selling a home, it's not just a financial transaction, it's a deeply personal decision. It's about finding a space that reflects your values, your lifestyle, and your aspirations for the future.
Exactly. It's about finding a place where you can truly feel at home, but with so many factors to consider. Location, affordability, design, functionality. It can be overwhelming to make a decision that feels right, both emotionally and financially. Any advice for our listeners who might be struggling to find that balance?
Absolutely. One of the most important things is to be clear about your priorities. What are the non-negotiables in your ideal home? Is it a certain number of bedrooms, a spacious backyard for the kids, or maybe proximity to good schools? Once you know what's truly important to you, you can start narrowing down your options.
That's such practical advice. It's like creating a roadmap for your real estate journey. But what about the emotional pull of certain properties? Sometimes you walk into a place and you just feel a connection. How do you reconcile those gut feelings with the practical considerations?
That's where it gets interesting. While it's important to listen to your intuition, it's equally important to be objective. Ask yourself, is this feeling based on genuine alignment with my needs and values? Or is it influenced by external factors, like staging or the excitement of the moment?
It's like checking in with yourself, making sure your head and your heart are on the same page. But sometimes, even when you find a property that seems perfect on paper and feels right emotionally, there's still that nagging fear of making the wrong decision. How do you overcome that fear and make a confident choice?
Fear is a natural part of any big decision, especially when it comes to something as significant as buying or selling a home. One way to overcome that fear is to do your research. Gather as much information as possible and weigh the pros and cons carefully. Talking to trusted friends, family members, or financial advisors can also help to provide perspective and support.
That's great advice. It's about surrounding yourself with a support system and making an informed decision that feels right for you. But let's not forget about the emotional impact of selling a home. It can be bittersweet to say goodbye to a place where you've created memories and built a life. Do you have any tips for navigating that emotional transition?
Selling a home could definitely be an emotional experience. It's often tied to major life changes, like growing families, career moves, or retirement. One way to make the process a little easier is to focus on the positive aspects of the move. What are you looking forward to in your new home or chapter of life?
It's about reframing the narrative, focusing on the excitement of what's to come, rather than dwelling on what you're leaving behind. But even with a positive outlook, there are bound to be moments of nostalgia and sentimentality. How do you honor those feelings while still moving forward?
It's important to acknowledge and process those emotions, taking time to reminisce about happy memories. Maybe by looking through old photos or sharing stories with loved ones can be a helpful way to say goodbye to a cherished home. And sometimes, a simple ritual, like planting a tree in your new yard as a symbol of new beginnings, can help to mark the transition.
Those are such beautiful suggestions. It's about finding ways to honor the past while embracing the future. But before we wrap up our deep dive, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the importance of aligning your housing choices with your values. What are some examples of how people are doing that in today's market?
Or seeing a growing trend of people prioritizing sustainability and energy efficiency in their homes. They're choosing eco-friendly building materials, installing solar panels, and opting for energy-efficient appliances. It's about making choices that are good for the planet and their wallets.
And what about those who are drawn to communal living? Are there options for them beyond traditional apartments or houses?
Absolutely. Co-living spaces are becoming increasingly popular, especially among younger generations. These are shared living arrangements that offer a sense of community, affordability, and convenience. They're often designed with shared amenities, like kitchens, workspaces, and social areas, fostering a sense of connection and collaboration.
It's fascinating to see how people are redefining what home means to them. But as we conclude our deep dive into the global housing market of 2025, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. Whether you're buying, selling, renting, or simply dreaming of your future home, remember that it's not just about bricks and mortar, square footage, or interest rates. It's about finding a place that nourishes your soul, reflects your values, and supports your journey through life.
Beautifully said. The ideal home is one that aligns with your heart, your mind, and your aspirations. And remember, the journey of finding that perfect place is an adventure in itself.
That's the perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the global housing market of 2025. We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and empowering. Until next time, happy house hunting for